First and foremost, shout out to Eric for sending me this story, because hopefully more people will probably cover this tomorrow. A lot of people don't live stream on the weekend for the most part, those of us that do news. But apparently, like, CNN actually had an investigation about the Palestinian detention center. And apparently there were Israeli whistleblowers that revealed information to them. Guys, this is a huge freaking story. And I'm just waiting for tomorrow, because I do feel like a lot more people are going to cover this tomorrow once we get out of the weekend. But I'm just waiting for tomorrow for more people to blow this up, because this story is freaking huge. We're going to start with the video, and then we're going to go into the article. The article gives a little bit more details. There's only so much I can show with the video, but we'll take you there. But it starts off here and it says, Israeli whistleblowers detail abuse of Palestinians in a shadowy detention center. So again, these are Israeli whistleblowers. This is not good for the Israeli government. Let's dive in.
It's a place the Israeli military doesn't want us to see.
How many Palestinians are in there right now?
Who are you?
Give me please now.
Hang on, what is it that you want? Hang on my card.
But CNN has gained exclusive evidence of Palestinian prisoner abuse from multiple Israeli whistleblowers.
I will go ahead and tell you guys, you will not see their faces like the Israeli whistleblowers in this segment. You are not going to see their faces. So just FYI, that's to protect them.
The Sde Teiman facility in southern Israel, we joined human rights activists amid growing public concern for the detainees being held inside. This is a protest by Israeli citizens outside a detention centre close to Gaza, where we know hundreds of Palestinians have been held. You can see it's a closed military facility. It's behind a barbed wire fence. We're not permitted access. And there's hostility from passers-by.
We just had somebody drive past in a car and they shouted out to us in Hebrew, You're defending murderers.
No.
You're defending, what do you, how do you
No,
answer that
we're defending basic human rights.
And eyewitnesses are now speaking out.
I'm sorry. I just want to go back to that sign so we can read what the sign says. So the signs that they're, what happened? Let me try it again. Sorry, I'll pause it.
Murderers.
No.
You're defending, what do you,
No,
how do you
no,
answer that
we're defending basic human rights.
And eyewitnesses are now speaking out.
Okay. It says a male soldier took off our hijabs and they pinched us and, or did inappropriate things to their bodies. And yes, to rip off someone's hijab, yes, that is an offensive thing.
Away from the military facility near the beaches of Tel Aviv, one young Israeli army reservist agreed to speak about scores of detainees at Sde Teiman. He says are kept in cages or pens, constantly shackled and blindfolded, many for weeks on end. We've hidden his identity and voice to shield him from prosecution.
We were told,
protect this man.
Told they are not allowed to move and must sit upright. They're not allowed to talk or peek under their blindfolds.
And what happened if they did do that? What kind of punishments were meted out?
We were allowed to pick out problematic people and punish them, having them stand with their hands above their heads for an unlimited time. If they didn't keep their hands up, we could zip tie them to the fence.
The Israeli military says detainees are handcuffed based on their risk level and health status. But the account tallies with photographic evidence obtained by CNN of Palestinian detainees inside Sde Teiman.
So pause for a second. First of all, why are they wearing blindfolds, right? So obviously that is to break their spirit. That is one of the things that you just can't, obviously no reason for that, no need to that other than to break them mentally, to break them psychologically, right?
And with hand and wrist injuries shown to CNN by dozens of Palestinians, released back into Gaza. I was zip-tied and blindfolded, says this former detainee, and tortured in a way I never imagined. One source telling us the restraints were so tight they had to amputate a man's hand.
The view that I've heard expressed is that, how do you think Israeli hostages are treated by Hamas?
This sentiment was voiced in the facility, but I think that if Hamas is so abominable, which I agree with, then why use Hamas as a bar? It's a descent into dehumanization.
And we're going to pause there because I have to skip through this part and go to the next part there. That is not an excuse for them to do what is being done to those Palestinian detainees there. And then also, again, we have to remind you, if you're just joining, these are Israeli whistleblowers that are revealing this information. So they actually were a part of this at those Palestinian detainees, the detention center here. So we are going to fast forward to this next part here. Sorry about that, guys. It's just there's a part they show after that I can't show on here. And let's go through there. And we're going to go to the next part here when they question why he's filming. Let's bring in this part.
Masked soldiers approach.
Hello, how are you? I'm filming this place.
It's property
Of the army. Oh. So
Who are you, youngster? I'm from CNN.
Give me please.
They tried to take our cameras.
Give me please now. Give me please now.
Hang on, what is it that you want? My camera or my card?
Then order us to leave.
So you guys see, this is why I was saying before, this is why they wanted Al Jazeera out. This is why they killed over 100 journalists that were covering what was happening in Gaza. This is why they don't want you to see what they're doing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this. The fact that this is exposed by mainstream media, I'm really curious to see what on earth is the Biden administration going to say about this? What on earth are, any of the other political officials, what are they going to say about this particular content? Don't be surprised whoever exposed this story, and particularly the reporter that's in this video, don't be surprised if they're removed from CNN. One more part here that I do want to get into, where they're actually going to go meet with another whistleblower. Here we go.
Experience of the Sde Teiman facility. It's experience that he says has left him shocked at the condition and the medical treatment of Palestinian detainees there.
Hello. He told us he treated Palestinian detainees with gunshot wounds fresh from the war zone in Gaza, but was appalled at the lack of equipment and expertise.
The problem is, Gazans who are brought in are labeled as terrorists, and it is very popular opinion over here that terrorists deserve to die, so they do not deserve the same medical care as everyone else.
Did everybody hear that part? So the framing that you hear that's coming from the state of Israel, where they say that, Gazans they say they're all Hamas. Notice some of the Israeli, soldiers saying this, they're all Hamas. You notice some of the actual politicians that we have in Congress that I think his name is Brian Mast. He was a former member of the IDF. Notice how he'll say that even a baby is Hamas. They're all Hamas. That is intentional, because if you continue to teach the people that they're all Hamas, then the people will say, oh, well, then they're all terrorists. Then you'll think that a Palestinian life is not valuable. And to push it a step further, you'll feel that you have every right to treat them in such a way that they have the right to abuse Palestinian people. They have the right to torment and to torture Palestinian people and to kill them. That's how the ideology works. That's how the brainwashing works. They convince you first that these people are dangerous. Then they convince you that because they are dangerous, they should not be around. Once they convince you that they should not be around, then you start to believe that you're allowed to abuse them and torment them and to do whatever you want to them. And you're okay to do that because they are dangerous. Now, haven't we seen this happen with other groups before, particularly in this country? Because once you convince the population, once you convince the populace that the other group is nothing, once you convince that populace that the other group is dangerous and beneath you and is nothing, and you start teaching that populace this at a very young age, it is very hard for people to break away from that type of ideology. These individuals, they are brainwashed at birth. This is why they get the information to them when they're young, so they ingrain it into them. And it's very hard to get people out of that style of brainwashing.
Satellite imagery obtained by CNN shows how the Sde Teiman facility was expanded after the October 7th attacks, with detention facilities and makeshift medical bays being added after public hospitals in Israel refused to treat injured Gazan suspects. Eyewitness accounts describe a field hospital with 15 to 20 patients, virtually naked and blindfolded, with hands.
Now, these aren't real people, obviously. These are like little dolls and stuff, but we'll fast forward. We're not going to go into all that. I want to get back to what he said here as well.
Ability. If you imagine being unable to move, being unable to see what's going on, that's something that borders, if not crosses, into psychological torture.
The Israeli military says prisoners are stripped for security checks and that investigations are opened when there's suspicion of misconduct. Still, accounts from Israelis and Palestinians inside and the shocking images paint a disturbing picture.
Now, again, this news broke, I believe, on Friday. It might have been right before I went live. I know Eric sent this to me. I want to bring up the article as well, because I want you to see a little bit more detailed information. Because again, it goes to show you that when Israel uses the excuse that we are defending ourselves, we're fighting against Hamas, we're not fighting against the civilians. Well, as you can see, this shows a different tune. So this was the article that was sent to me by Eric, and it says, I'll make this bigger for the people. Strapped down, blindfolded, held in diapers, Israeli whistleblowers detail abuse of Palestinians in shadowy detention center. I want to get started right about here because I don't want to rehash. CNN spoke to 3 Israeli whistleblowers who worked at the Sde Teiman desert camp. I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, I'm sorry, which holds Palestinians detained during Israel's invasion of Gaza. All spoke out at risk of legal repercussions and reprisals from groups supportive of Israel's hardline policies in Gaza. So it was 3 that came forward. They paint a picture of a facility where doctors sometimes amputated prisoners' limbs due to injuries sustained from constant handcuffing, of medical procedures sometimes performed by underqualified medics, earning it a reputation for being a paradise for interns. So, and I'll give you another example in just a second. So they are basically torturing these people. So they're sending medical interns to experiment and to, I guess, have some type of clinicals on these particular people, the Palestinians in the detention center. Now, I want to give you a little bit of history. You want to know who else? What other group had medical experiments performed on them? Black people. Black people in the United States. For women, every time when you go to the doctor to have your annual appointment, you know why you can have that appointment? Because doctors experimented on Black women using devices that I would not show on here. You can Google it though and see the pictures for yourself. No anesthesia, nothing. And if you see those devices, you'll say to yourself, what the hell? Then we have to go back to the Tuskegee Airmen experiments as well. So do you see how once you have convinced a populace that a particular group is not worthy, that they are less than, and then you also convince them that they're dangerous, well, then they just lose all sympathy or empathy for their life. And then they use them for whatever they want to use them for. Let's continue. So we talked about here about the wounds. This is really bad. It says a paradise for interns and where the air is filled with the smell of neglected wounds left to rot. This is very, very bad for Israel. Very bad. Again, this is coming from CNN of all places. According to the accounts, the facility, some 18 miles from Gaza frontier, is split into two parts. Enclosures where around 70 Palestinian detainees from Gaza are placed under extreme physical restraint, and a field hospital where wounded detainees are strapped to their beds, wearing diapers and fed through straws. Now, why would they put a diaper on them? Because they're not allowing them to use the restroom. They strip them down of anything that resembles human beings, said one whistleblower. The beatings were not done to gather intelligence. They were done out of revenge. It was punishment for what they, the Palestinians, did on October 7th, and punishment for behavior in the camp. Now, again, none of these individuals that are a part of this detention center were a part of that activity that happened on October 7th, but they're being punished for it anyway. Yes, baby Ethernet, Henrietta Lacks. That's right. Another one experimented on. See that? Responding to CNN's request for comment on all the allegations made in this report, the Israeli military, known as the IDF, said in a statement, the IDF ensures proper conduct towards the detainees in custody. Any allegation of misconduct by IDF soldiers is examined and dealt with accordingly. In appropriate cases, MPCID, the Military Police Criminal Investigations Division, investigations are opened when there is suspicion of misconduct justifying such action. Detainees are handcuffed based on their risk level and health status. Incidents of unlawful handcuffing are not known to the authorities. So I would just say that's a blatant lie. Because if the authorities do know, do you think they're going to say that to CNN? Oh, yeah, we knew that was happening. Of course not. They're going to protect themselves. So here's a picture here of where this detention center is located. The military base that now doubles as a detention center in Israel's Negev desert is located 30 kilometers, which is 18 miles from the Gaza frontier. So take a look at the picture here, and you'll see here's Gaza over here to the left, and then here is the detention center. Close enough to Gaza where they can still, make that easy to transport, but far enough so that they cannot be spotted and you just may not know what is actually happening here. The IDF did not directly deny accounts of people being stripped of their clothing or held in diapers. Everybody hear this? Instead, the Israeli military said that the detainees are given back their clothing once the IDF has determined that they pose no security risk. Reports of abuse at Teiman have already surfaced in Israeli and Arab media after an outcry from Israeli and Palestinian rights groups over conditions there. So the outcry is coming from Israeli and Palestinian rights groups. But this rare testimony from Israelis working at the facility sheds further light on Israel's conduct as it wages war in Gaza with fresh allegations of mistreatment. It also casts more doubt on the Israeli government's repeated assertions that it acts in accordance with accepted international practices and law. Now, this is CNN just trying to be cute. This is CNN just trying to be cute, because what do you mean it casts more doubt that Israel is following international law? All you have to do is look up the international law and look up the statements from all of the human rights organizations, and you already know that Israel is not following international law. So this is how they write this piece versus how someone who's an independent journalist would write this piece. Think about that for just a second. CNN has requested permission from the Israeli military to access the base. Last month, a CNN team covered a small protest outside of its main gate by Israeli activists demanding the closure of the facility. Israeli security forces questioned the team for around 30 minutes there, demanding to see the footage taken by CNN's photojournalists. Israel often subjects reporters, even foreign journalists, to military censorship on security issues. So we're going to talk about the desert as well, detained in the desert. The Israeli military has acknowledged partially converting 3 different military facilities into detention camps for Palestinian detainees from Gaza since the Hamas-led October 7th attack on Israel, in which Israeli authorities say about 1,200 were killed. We don't need to go into that whole story again. We already know this. The camps are part of the infrastructure of Israel's unlawful combatants law, an amendment legislation passed by the Knesset last December that expanded the military's authority to detain suspected militants. So again, no proof, just suspected. And nobody is holding them accountable for the behavior that is happening at that detention center. Very troubling. And honestly, the images look familiar to me. It goes on to say the law permits the military to detain people for 45 days without an arrest warrant, after which they must be transferred to Israel's formal prison system, the IPS, where over 9,000 Palestinians are being held in condition that rights groups say have drastically deteriorated since October 7th. 2 Palestinian prisoners associations last week said that 18 Palestinians, including leading Gaza surgeon Dr. Albersh, had died in Israeli custody over the course of the war. Does that sound somewhat familiar when you compare it to the police state in the United States? How many times we've heard these stories about people dying in police custody, and now the police are like, oh, we're just going to open an investigation and see what's going on. An internal investigation. They're going to investigate themselves. Remember, the police in the United States are trained by the IDF. So you see where the behavior is coming from. The military detention camps, where the number of inmates is unknown, serve as a filtration point during the arrest period mandated by the unlawful combatants law. So here is something that is very concerning, where the number of inmates is unknown. What do you mean they don't know the number of inmates that are there? Let's go on a little bit more here. CNN interviewed over a dozen former Gazan detainees who appeared to have been released from those camps. They said they could not determine where they were held because they were blindfolded through most of their detention and cut off from the outside world. But the details of their accounts tally with those of the whistleblowers. They were blindfolded. They did not know where they were held. Doesn't this sound familiar? Don't you feel like you've heard this story before? I don't know when, and I can check with Eric. I don't know when Gray Zone is going live this week, but I'm pretty sure they're probably going to cover. Or Eric, you can tell me, did they cover this Friday? Did they cover this already Friday? Maybe they did. I have to go back and check. Anyway, if Gray Zone goes live this week, they're probably going to cover this story. So I recommend checking that out. And they're probably going to have more information than I do. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is not good for Israel at all. Go to part 2, Eric, because I have something else to show you, because the world is turning on Israel. Things are starting to change. And some of the things they don't want you to see, they keep talking about the campus protest in the United States. Look at this massive protest happening in Tokyo, Japan. Tokyo, Japan. You love to see it, right? They don't want you to see that. They just want you to think, oh, it's kids trying to be violent on campus. And then also, we got to talk about this when we talk about the number of Palestinians that have been killed. Check this out. This is coming from Lee Camp. Over 200,000 Palestinians killed by Israel since October 7th. This is an estimation that is coming from Ralph Nader. Okay. So Ralph Nader is doing the math. According to the math, allegedly, Ralph Nader says over 200,000 Palestinians, not 35,000, have already died since October. This is based on nearly 100,000 bombs and missiles directly on civilians without food, water, medicine, electricity, healthcare, and World Health casualty projections starting since last October. The 35,000 official fatality count is absurd. No human beings could endure those massacres and related untreated diseases since October 7th. And guys, even so, my number was way off because I said I would estimate it's at least 50,000, right? But Ralph Nader is doing the math. So he's telling you it's probably over 200,000. And then I told you guys, mainstream media, they have been focusing on that 30,000. Notice how all of a sudden it just stopped at 30,000. They're not considering the people that are still under the rubble. So when all is said and done, eventually that real number is going to be revealed. And all the people who sat up there and told us this is not a genocide are going to have to eat their words. Because Ralph goes on to say, bears repeating, Biden's own humanitarian aid envoy stated weeks ago, there is an imminent risk of starvation for the majority, if not all, the 2.2 million population of Gaza. This is not a point in debate. It is an established fact, which the United States, its experts, the international community, its experts assesses and believes is real. So he goes on to say here, ultimately, unless something changes, the world faces the prospect of almost a quarter of Gaza's 2 million population, close to 500,000 human beings, dying within a year. These would be largely deaths from preventable health causes and the collapse of the medical system. It is a crude estimate, but one that is data-driven, using the terrifyingly real numbers of deaths in previous and comparable conflicts. Professor Devi, he's the chair of global public health at the University of Edinburgh. So that's the source there. And then he goes on. I just want to make sure I'm going in order because he said a lot more here. Why the vast undercount of Palestinian fatalities kept at 35,000? ? I told you, Hamas keeps their figures low to avoid being further accused of an inability to protect their own people and provide shelters, while Netanyahu blocks U.S., Western, and Israeli journalists from finding out the true scope of the slaughter by free reporting in the Gaza enclave. Estimated over 200,000 dead, the rest of the population sick, injured, or dying. That's from Ralph Nader. Eventually, those real numbers are going to come out. Eventually, they are going to come out. And now even Egypt is turning against Israel. This is huge. Egypt announces intention to join South Africa's lawsuit against Israel in the UN's top court. Remember, Egypt aligns with the United States. So you see this? So this pushes back on that narrative that Ron DeSantis said. He was like, oh, how come none of those other nations are coming out in support of the Palestinian people? Things have changed. So Ron DeSantis, you can eat your words. You see this? That is huge. Eric, when we're done, let's put the link to this article in the chat. That is huge. The announcement from the Egyptian Foreign Ministry comes as Israeli troops continue to operate along the Egypt-Gaza border and move that Cairo has warned could endanger the peace treaty between the two countries. It's getting wild out here. It's getting wild out here, folks. We even have Alessandra Mille stepping down as her role of Norway's spokesperson due to the genocide. So we have her speaking out. Everybody is turning.
During the Eurovision final. Even though I'm thankful that I was given the opportunity to do so, I've taken the decision to withdraw. United by music, Eurovision's motto, is the reason why I do music, unites people, bring them together. But right now, those words are just empty words. There's a genocide going on. And I'm asking you all to please open up your eyes, open up your heart. Let love lead you to the truth. It's right in front of you. Free Palestine.
Israel has lost support. We've been saying it all this time. And that's why a lot of people are panicking. That's why a lot of these organizations are panicking. That's why they're going on Morning Joe and MSNBC over and over again. These people are freaking out. You go over here, you got MSNBC. Actually, I don't know if they intended to do this, expresses regret for giving too much context about Palestine. This could have just slipped out, but listen to this. Everybody, you got the media.
Another bit of history to remember. If you look at the map, we have a map that shows historically the areas that used to be Palestine in 1946, and then the UN plan there, and then as it shrunk down to basically Gaza and the West Bank, right? And then present. So what does that show you, Martin, that the area where Palestinians are living, has it grown increasingly smaller?
Well, absolutely. Of course, this is what it's all about. It's all about the land. And what this map shows you, and I must say it's pretty shocking when you present it in this way, what it clearly shows is that if there is no peace agreement between Palestinians and Israel, more of those green areas, more of that Palestinian land will be eaten up by Jewish settlements. Although right now there is a freeze on settlements by Israel because there's so much international pressure, the Palestinians say if we don't have peace soon, we won't have a Palestine left.
And the Israelis say we have every right to be in all of those areas.
Well, the Israelis say, look, you know, this is our homeland too, and we're Jews. We have the right to live anywhere, same as anywhere else in the world. We should be allowed to live anywhere we like. And that's hard to argue about, except it's taking the land of a future Palestinian state, which that's what the frustration and the violence is all about, for the most part, the occupation of their land.
Last Thursday, in an attempt to talk about the context for the current turmoil in the Middle East, we showed a series of maps of the changing geography in that region. We realized after we went off the air, the maps were not factually accurate, and we regret using them.
So you see that? They were spoken to. You see that? They were spoken to. We all have seen those maps. Now, there's a lot of frustration that comes along with this. And some of you may be asking, like, well, what can we do, right? What can I do as a consumer? Here's something you can do that actually isn't going to cost you any money. This is one way that you can push back against what's happening to the Palestinian people. And you can actually push back against the state of Israel. Check this out. You got to love him for doing this. It's called Operation No Buyout. Fill your online cart and then do not check out. It costs the company marketing money and messes with the algorithm. Let's get into this because he explains this pretty well. Operation #No Buyout, new day, new celebrity. Listen to this.
Yesterday, one of my videos went viral, and in it I talked about an initiative where we targeted certain celebrities' online stores, checked out a bunch of their items, as many as you can, and then completely abandoned it the minute before purchasing. We can directly affect that store's sales and also cost these celebrities a lot of money. How this works and the reason why this strategy is so effective is because every time you abandon an item in a shopping cart, it limits this product's availability to other customers who are interested in buying it. It can
pause, because he talks really fast. Get this, guys. Okay, all these celebrities that are supporting the state of Israel, all these celebrities, a lot of them have a business on the side, right? The singers, actors, a lot of them have their own business where they have some product line or whatever. One of the ways that you can hit back that doesn't cost you anything is doing exactly what he told you to do. And he's right. Whenever you put it in the cart, that makes sure that item is taken away. It is not available for the next person who comes in who may want to buy. This is actually one of the most simplest things that we can do. Fill up your cart and don't buy it. He goes on. Let's go back just a little bit.
Buying it. It can also confuse the store's marketing team into what products are actually in demand and what isn't. And finally, you can also drain their marketing dollars, because every time you abandon an item, the store will send you a bunch of emails and ads targeted towards you, which again will cost them a lot of money to do so. That's why I'm starting this initiative called Operation No Buyout, where every single day we select a specific celebrity who has been silent and complicit these past few months in order to drain their money. Yesterday, we went with Kim Kardashian, so today we're going to do Kylie Cosmetics. So make sure to go to her online store, select as many items as possible, and then completely abandon it. Good luck.
There you go. Okay. That is something that you could do now, right? That is something that you could do at this point in time. So just think about that for a second. Something that doesn't really cost you money. Now, one of the things that was said here, whereas a Desert Mantis said, that is not true. Most sites drop it from your cart when you log out. That's if you log in. I don't know about you guys, but I don't even log in. When I'm buying something online, I don't log in. You know, it depends if you're using the app or not. I don't know if you're doing this on a computer, if you're doing it on your phone or whatever. But that's interesting. Lance says, does Michael Rappaport have an online store? I'll shelf everything. No. That's hilarious. Oh my God. Oh, Eric, I knew you would know. It depends on how the online store is coded. There you go. Yeah, because the ones that I go to, like, number one, I'm not logging in, but I can put it in my cart and it just stays there. Because sometimes I don't come back to it for a couple of days. And like, honestly, like, yeah, Senate Girl says exactly. Don't log in, shop as a guest. Yeah, I never. And I think the thing is like, I didn't even know like about this strategy that this, gentleman just mentioned. I didn't know about that. I would just do that because I would see something and I would say, oh, okay, I think I might get that, but I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to commit. So I would just put it in the cart and I would say, okay, I'll come back to that later when I make up my mind. But I didn't realize I was, what else that was doing at that point in time. So really interesting.